Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, Developing Leadership Values and Innovation Mindset. So my name is Loïc Lemarois, and I am a marketing manager here at Headspring. So this webinar is intended to be interactive. We want to hear from you. So please do send in your comments, send in your questions. We'll be actually having a Q&A at the end of this webinar. So please use actually on the side here on your right, there's a chat function. So please do send in your comments, do send in your questions. So today we're here with Balvinder Powar. He's an innovation professor at IE Business School, and as well, he is an educator for us at Headspring. So Balvinder, I'm really glad that you could join us today. How are you?
Thank you. Doing good. And good to see that we're together and everyone's there. So thank you.
I'll
go ahead.
I'll let you the floor. Go for it.
No, thank you, Log. Thank you, Headspring, for organizing this. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. First of all, I do sincerely hope, and we sincerely hope from Headspring, that you are all well and safe in these difficult times, and also that your families are doing well and your beloved people, and it stays like that. Now today, we have an hour. We want to make it as interactive as possible. We're talking about a very broad subject. So we're talking about developing leadership values, innovation mindset. So it's thinking about some frameworks, it's thinking about company culture, it's thinking about the values that are important to help us to innovate. So this is a very practical session. We're going to give you a lot of input. We're going to give you some frameworks. We're going to actually talk about some examples and some case studies of companies that have innovated. And also we're going to look at the past and think about, in also extreme times, what have people done to keep on innovating despite very difficult circumstance and even lack of capital. So we had over 150 people sign up, so they'll come in as we go. At the moment, we have around 75 people, so that's great. We also understand that a lot of the people listening are from learning and development HR. And what we want this talk to be is a springboard. We're going to give you as much useful information as we can. We're going to start with a poll. We're going to ask you some questions, and at the end we leave some time for Q&A. So it's a bit of a springboard to think these are little nuggets to think about, but we'd be very happy to sit down with you and co-create, as we do in Headspring, to create a training program, to create value and change on the ground, and especially right now in this circumstance. A lot of what we're going to talk about is very broad about leadership, values, innovation, and some things are specific to the situation we're living. We have to think that this is a very interesting time. If you look at the Chinese word for conflict, conflict in the Chinese has two parts, danger and opportunity. So yes, it's difficult, but there's always a time for opportunity, especially in a moment of reset. So let's get into it. And thank you again for being with us today. We know everybody's very busy. So we have a question mark there, and the question mark is to think, what do we do with this? If we want to innovate, if we want to innovate in difficult times, do we stop? Are we proactive? Do we listen? I would say we have to make a step forward, and that step forward has to be combined with values, skills, and also the type of company culture. It's better to make a decision than not, but certain values will help us to make the right decisions. And if we have the right foundation in our team of people, we're more likely to be more creative, we're more likely to innovate, and those are the things we're going to talk about. Now, just to start, we have a poll, so I'd like to ask Loïc if he can actually start the poll to get some questions, okay? So I think the poll is open, yes? And please answer, there's a choice of 3 answers. There's the question. Please give your answer and let's see what people think. And Loïc will tell me when we can open it up and share with everybody.
Yeah, Bal, we're still waiting for people to vote. The votes are coming in.
Perfect. So please, there's a question. There are 3 options. These are examples of skills and values that can be important and are important for innovation. Let's see which one do you think is probably the most important one. So please give your answer and then we'll share.
So, well, I've just shared the scores. So we have 44% in trust. And then empathy and creativity, we have 28% equal.
Wow, very, very interesting. Okay, so now we'll start again with the presentation. Thank you very much for that. Let me go there, full screen here. So that's very interesting because actually, you know, although I put that word there, I think trust is probably one of the most important things in innovation, because this is a value that's overlying and transversal to everything. And trust helps us to create a safe environment. And if we have a safe environment, we're more likely to give more. So if there's a sense of a good culture, if there's a sense of aligned purpose, what we unlock is something called the discretionary effort. Now, if we pay people enough money, they will do the work. But once they have enough money, they won't be more creative for more money. And this has been proven many times. So what we have to think is, when do people give more? They give more when the purpose is aligned, when they think they're doing good for themselves and others, when they feel they have autonomy and feel valued, and if they're learning as they're working. So if we can put that into the equation, we're more likely to have an innovative and creative environment. And we have to think that people come up with ideas, not robots. So the human part is very important, but the culture is first. A lot of companies say to us, yeah, let's go digital. And digital is great, but first let's understand why people want to use digital. And if we create that right culture and that understanding, the foundation, that's a very, very strong building block to have innovation and to create value. I always wonder why you compare two companies, for example, two mobile phone companies, two manufacturers of mobile phones. Why is one so successful and another not so much when the technology is very similar? There has to be something about the company culture. And I would say trust and respect, especially trust, is the overlying value that we have to include, especially now when we talk about creating a safe and reliable environment so our people feel good to give more, especially now when we're asking them to perform the same and even more in extreme circumstance. So we have to look after them. And trust also connects to our clients and something that the leaders have to portray. So we're going to get into that and also look into the innovation framework. So we have to do something. As I said before, in the Chinese word danger and opportunity, and also from the word chrysalis. Crisis comes from chrysalis. You can say that we're living a crisis right now. And in the chrysalis, something breaks for something new to come out. So we have in this image something not so beautiful, but something broke and we had something beautiful come out of it. So that is the option you have. And we can say, always there are new opportunities. You can also allow yourselves to have a type of reset. Anything goes. Nobody knows the answers. We have to create a culture in our organizations where we can try. And failure is not an option, and failure is not a problem. Failure or something not working to plan is part of the process, and it could actually give you something new. Now, the sweet spot, and this comes from Guy Kawasaki, who was involved in some of the most important startups and unicorns in Silicon Valley, companies like Apple and other big firms. He said that for any type of project in innovation or startup or whatever, you need these three parts. And when I talk to our students, I say, if you're doing a pitch for an idea around innovation, these are the key things. So for us also to innovate, we have to have the three parts. One is expertise. We need a group of people with complementary skills, talents, and experience to serve the project in mind. Opportunity, we have to see the opportunity. Is it an opportunity we've already addressed, or is it something new? What is the opportunity and how do we grow from there? Do we work in a local market, then scale it up? How are we going to attack that opportunity? How are we going to solve a problem? How are we going to solve a need? And then a passion. We have to be passionate about what we're doing. If we're not passionate, why would other people be interested? So that's the sweet spot to think about this innovation mindset. Complementary talent, see an opportunity, and the passion. If we have those three things, we're more likely to be successful. I use this image a lot about going to space. I've worked a lot in the new space industry, and this image is very interesting because it's also about going into the unknown. And right now we're going into the unknown, and it's a bit like the grief cycle from Kubler-Ross. We can think about what we lost, but everybody reacts to grief and loss in a different way. So are we still surviving? Are we thinking about the future, or are we ready? Where are we? We have to understand that different people, different members of our team are at a different place, so we have to show empathy. Now, when I ask my students what types of skills and values did they need to go to space, it's interesting that 70% of the words are around soft skills. Things like trust, things like effective communication, things like respect for each other, things like humility, because only 3 people got there, but there were 500,000 people behind. Now, this was a very technical project going to the moon space, so really it was a bit more 50-50, but what we see is the soft skills are key, and that is a message. We have been focused on the hard skills, but if we want to do something exceptional, the soft skills around people are key, and they're not soft and easy. They're actually the hardest things about company culture because people are complicated. We are complex. Also, if you think about the future of innovation, more and more we need to have technical ability, but we need to have prowess in the soft skills. Why is that? Because there are certain things that machines, robots, and AI will never be able to do. Creativity is very human. Machines can replicate that, but not to the same degree. The brain is still the most complex organism we know in the universe. Things like empathy, and right now we need a bit of empathy. We're entering people's homes. The first question we ask is, how are you doing? Are you okay? Is your family okay? And that creates trust. And if people feel comfortable, they're more likely to give more, what we call the discretionary effort. We want to unlock that. That little bit of effort, that little bit of extra can make a massive difference today. And things like ethics, about decision making, those complex decision making, they're very human. So more and more in the future, what I believe, the soft skills, the human skills that are purely human and cannot be done by machines will become more valuable because the other things will be replaced by machines, AI, and they will be automated. So this is a quote from Carnegie Institute of Technology from many years ago. They said 85% of your financial success is due to personality, ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead. Only 15% due to technical knowledge. Really, it's a balance, but the soft skills sometimes have been ignored. I think we can fast track them now. So as we agreed, trust is probably the biggest value here at all levels. The leadership role, with the team, and with the external client. And what I would say, how we behave now will define the relationship our stakeholders have with us afterwards, when they can make more decisions, when they have money to buy things. So it's important to show this now, waiting for when things are back to more normal, people will relate to us in a different way. So what do you do? Do you make the most of the situation? Do you show generosity? Do you try to exploit the situation? Obviously, being more generous and supportive, that is something we can do right now and build more in relationships, because it's very hard to close certain projects right now because of the uncertainty. So trust is believing that someone is good and honest, will not harm you, or that something is safe and reliable. That is key to the company culture. If we can create that in our companies, we're more likely to have people who are willing to give more. And that more means performance. This is very much connected to performance, creativity, and creating value. Even there's a barometer called the Edelman Trust Barometer that talks about, the importance of trust. And in 2018, they said, in the polls and the surveys, 70% of the job of the CEO was to build trust. So this is massive. And right now, I think trust, safe and reliable environments are key. And if we did a program together, we could actually establish that, do that, and show how to make it happen. What is trust made out of? And I talk about the leader. The leader has to show this, as we saw from the barometer. We have to look after the talent, our team, and also the connection with the customer. So it's transversal, but it's made up of three things. We have to be authentic. We have to be honest and transparent. We have to show empathy. We have to show logic. So in normal times, if innovation is hard, it's on the top of Maslow's hierarchy, another triangle. Now it's going to be even harder because we have to look after our people because everybody is managing a difficult circumstance. So more and more the support and trust is needed so that people don't do just enough, they give more, as we have to think about new business models, new products and service, because there are new opportunities and traditional business in many cases is going down. So we could say, and this term is used a lot, this is the new normal: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, VUCA. This was a term developed by the American military to describe a warfare situation. So how do we flip it around? This is what I'd suggest. So we go from volatile to vision, uncertain to understanding, complex to clarity, ambiguous to agility, the solution. Now look here, we have an example, and I talk a lot about space industry because I've been involved in that for many years. We have people in a confined space like we are now. We can't go out much, but do they look unhappy? They look very happy. They're actually a group of astronauts and technicians on the International Space Station, which you can see at 400 kilometers every day above you. Now, why do they look content? Because they're doing something of meaning and value. They're doing something for humankind. So in our organizations, if we can understand why people do things, what is the sense of purpose, and align them, we're more likely to have them happy in what they're doing. So communication is very important. And what I do a lot with my teams and in the classes, we do a nuanced working agreement. And the working agreement helps us to understand values and people's needs. And we talk about individual needs, team needs, and how you organize the work. They can be different, but the most important thing is to have the understanding. So if I asked a group of people, what is the most important thing you need in your team to be able to work well and be innovative and creative, they would say trust and respect and communication. But what we have to understand is what it means for each one. Trust might be, for one, the way to talk. It might be the way to share the information. It could be coming to the meeting on time. The banner word is the same, but underneath, the meaning and the relevance of the word might be different for each one. So if we understand that, we're more likely to go deeper in that understanding and create that foundation. Values create values. And I think, Salesforce is an interesting example, a 20-year-old company that now has revenues of nearly 20 billion. And Mark Benioff talked recently about values, and the values should affect the community around us. And this is more and more important now. Values create value. Salesforce is very interesting because before they made any money, they started a concept called Ohana, meaning 1% of our future income services we will give them away. 1% of our revenue we will share and we will donate, and 1% of our employees' time we will also give to society. Now, thanks to that, they created trust, and the people in the company were very aligned with those values to think we're doing good work, but also we're going to help others around us. So we're working, but we're also making a positive impact on society. Now, Salesforce did that before they had any revenue, but that 1%, 1 plus 1 plus 1, is now worth around hundreds of millions of dollars a year in services, product, money, and employee time. I am sure that has helped that company to be innovative, because if your values are aligned with the company's, if you're doing work and thinking my work is helping to make the world a better place, obviously you're going to be more motivated to give that extra, the discretionary effort. The discretionary effort doesn't come just with money. Once we have enough money, it's about purpose, autonomy, learning, and the company culture. So that's why it's important. We're talking about the leadership values to create innovation. Also, if you think about values, if you have your values very clear, it's easy to make decisions because they're your North Star. So Amazon is an example. Internally, we could think, well, what happens to the employees? There's some scandal about that. But as a client, they have said, we want to be the most customer-centric company in the world and the universe. Now, in my experience, 99% of the time, when I order something from Amazon, I get it before time, there are no issues. And the moment and the 1% there is an issue, they find a solution. So it shows us if you keep your values very clear, it's easy to make decisions. They're like an anchor. And in these times, which are very unpredictable and difficult, those are even more important. And sometimes maybe we can adjust our mission statement to adapt to the circumstance. And I'll talk about some examples. So values for innovation, these comes from Wired magazine, which is a very respected publication around tech. And they talked about the core values to boost innovation. So leadership, of course, we are leaders here, accountability, measurement, quality, individual part, and trust. These are the values that boost innovation inside any organization. So let's talk specifically about innovation. What is the basic concept of innovation? There are three things. First, we need an idea. Then we need to create something to experience. And then we need to validate and see if there's a market and people are willing to pay for the product or service. Now, that is the classic way. But if we go a bit further, we have something called disruptive innovation. And I'm going to ask a little question there, if you want to put in the chat. How is disruptive innovation different from normal innovation? Can anybody tell us? How is disruptive innovation different? Disruptive innovation can help us right now because it's a framework that's very, very interesting, especially in the current circumstance. Any ideas? Please write in the chat if you know how disruptive innovation is different from normal innovation. Please do so. Any ideas? Any thoughts? Please put them right in the chat. At the end, we'll have a Q&A, but please write in the chat if you have any ideas. Any thoughts? Go ahead, don't be scared to write in the chat. Any thoughts? How is disruptive innovation different from normal innovation? Please go ahead. Please write in the chat. I think you can see the chat. Please write in the chat. Please write in the chat. Any ideas? Please go ahead, write in the chat. Let me see if I can see it. Please, in the chat, what do you think? Okay. Well, let me explain. So disruptive innovation is actually a very interesting concept. And if you think about it, when we innovate, sometimes we think about our traditional markets and we think about our traditional competitors. So we can see a company selling a certain product or service and we think we'll do the same slightly differently, okay? It could be this glass. People like it, they use it a lot in festivals, it's unbreakable. We'll do the same, but slightly bigger. So, but that is limited because it's very hard to get new customers or take away customers from a traditional, more established firm in the market. But disruptive innovation can help us to look at things differently. And the great thing, we have a comment there, disruptive is something never before considered due to how crazy it may be, but now it's important to try new things. I would definitely agree. They're replying, okay, perfect. I can see that. Yeah, perfect. I can see that. Okay. Okay. Unexpected, something more considered. Now, it's a time that we can be a bit creative and we can be a bit crazy. Why not? So it's a time, I think, where we can be even more creative because it's a time of global reset. So maybe we can dare to be different. Disruptive innovation is very interesting because it is something that doesn't necessarily depend on money or technology, not always. So let's look into it. Now, disruptive innovation, the term was invented by an incredible Harvard University professor called Clayton Christensen in his book called The Innovator's Dilemma. We love Harvard because of the case system. Unfortunately, Clayton Christensen passed a few months ago, passed away. So he said things that are quite shocking about innovation. They sound like a paradox. A disruptive innovation offers lower performance according to what mainstream market has historically demanded. Okay. At the same time provides new performance attributes which makes it prosper in a different market. That is the key, new market. Let's look at an example. Now, my parents are from India. So do we think that 15 years ago, a farmer in India, China, or Africa would have had a smartphone? No. What about today? Do those farmers have smartphones? Yes, they do, but they don't have a $1,000 Samsung or Apple. They have a smartphone that costs probably less than $100 or even about $50. Now that smart, simple smartphone and that low-tech phone is actually a disruptive innovation because it gives a product or service to people who didn't think that they could access it. And in turn, it creates new innovation. Because if you look at the most advanced payment systems for mobile in the world, they actually come from Africa, apps like M-Pesa. Why is that? Because in those markets, those people with lower income, they only have one device connected to internet, and that is the basic smartphone. Logistics are bad, people don't have bank accounts, and it's hard to get to the banks anyway because of the difficult transportation system. So the apps that they have in their phone have to do a lot more for them. That's why these apps are so advanced regarding payment, and even communication apps like WeChat from China, which was actually developed for the lower income population, are much more advanced than WhatsApp. They're like WhatsApp with LinkedIn and Facebook, etc., social media put in, because they were bundled for the lower income. So actually, the disruptive innovation and the low-tech innovation that access new markets can create high-tech innovation, which is demanded by more consolidated markets. So it's interesting today that innovation can come from a case because we have to look at innovation which is more accessible as we have less capital because of the current situation. So it's fascinating. Also, if we talk about a global economy, we might think about this less globalization, but we need more and more collaboration. We cannot do things by ourselves. So if we have less resources right now, instead of saying we can't do it, why don't we look for new partners to share the cost, share the burden, but also to look at things differently? So one thing I want you to have in mind is this key. Disruptive innovation talks about competing against the non-consumer. So that's what you have to think about. It's not that you are competing against the normal consumer and the ones who normally buy. If you can find the people who are not consuming and offer them a service or a product, you have no competition. What your challenge will be is to keep on being relevant. So in today's world, we're going to be looking at value and cost, but also there's an element of experience. So think about Apple, for example. Are they the most high-tech company in the world? No. But they are very brave. They launch many new products. Some of them are very successful, like the iPhone. Some of them not so much, like Apple TV. But they launch, but they also create an emotional connection with their client in the way their stores are set up, which are more experience centers, in the fact that when the headphones were white color, you felt that you're part of a special club. So emotion is very interesting now in business, because if you make people feel something, you're not just trading on price. So my message is Don't just look at your typical consumers. Try to think of non-consumers and how you can make them consumers. And don't think it's always about money and technology. Create an environment where people are more likely to share their ideas and execute them. And also, quick comment, the chat is turned off, so please, you can respond in the question tab a bit later on. Let's continue. So, I actually live in Madrid, Spain, and it might surprise you, but these innovations are actually Spanish. Now, they're very simple things, and they created new markets, and they solved the problem of the time. Some are still relevant, many are not so relevant, but they were innovative at the time, and behind them are groups of people. Now, I want to give the example of the Chupa Chup, the lollipop, as an example of a disruptive innovation and something that is simple, because it's very easy to be complicated. It's actually harder to be simple. So we need to think in a new way. We have to go back to basics and maybe involve new people to help us to think. I have seen on my courses in Headspring, if we create the right environment, people who didn't think that they were creative become creative. So the environment and the culture is key, what we establish there. Now, the Chupa Chup is a great example for this reason. Now, this was developed in the late 50s in Catalonia in Spain, and it was a company selling round hard sweets. Now, they were doing pretty good. They were doing, good business, but they realized there was a concern. If you give a round hard sweet to children, what are you concerned about? You're concerned that they might choke. So they had some brainstorming, they thought about it, and they said, why don't we put a stick on the sweet? And why don't we make this stick hollow? So even if the child takes the sweet further into their mouth, they can still breathe. So two things happened there. It was something extremely innovative, new in the market. Parents would give it to their children because they felt safe. Children would want it because they love novelty. So they were so successful, they did very good marketing campaigns, even they sent Chupa Chup lollipops to space. And by 1968, they decided to do a redesign for this logo. Now, this logo is very vintage, okay? But it was very innovative in the fact it was on the top of the suite, so it changes the way they did their merchandising. But also they asked an incredible artist to design it for them. Maybe you don't know this, but this Chupa Chup logo, the lollipop logo, was designed by Salvador Dali. So what we have is an example of a disruptive innovation that's very simple. It's not about lots of money. It's very low tech. And also it's a work of art. So I always have a Chupa Chup in my hand or nearby. And this is the Coca-Cola flavor, which is my favorite, because it's a great example that we don't have to be complicated. And especially now when probably we have less capital, maybe we have to think simple. And maybe we have to think, what are the new markets that we can address? Obviously, if we have money and with technology, even better. But sometimes it's not always positive because we're focused more on that than actually defining the new market. And we talk about the Industrial Revolution. So we talked about the first, second, third, fourth, the mix of humans and machines. But now last year we started to talk about the fifth, where we talk about the connection of innovation with purpose and inclusivity. So now I think this is an opportunity for us to be even more human, where we have to look after each other to get through. Now about the talent. Now when the market is very buoyant, talent is obviously very expensive, and talent is what you need to attract. Now it's actually slightly different because there is less money in the market, so people want to work. But in a buoyant market, talent is key. Imagine you're a bank. Today, a bank, people don't go to a branch, and they can't right now, but people don't want to go to branches anymore. They want to do their banking on a mobile phone, on a website. So that means a bank, a fintech, becomes almost like a software tech company. If you don't have the tech talent in your company, then you're not going to continue being relevant. So for the talent also, and for the teams, they need purpose and meaning. And this came from Deloitte. They want a fair environment to work in. They want to feel that they can grow, they want to collaborate, and they need transparency and openness. This connects very much to the value of trust, which you all agreed is probably the biggest value for innovation mindset and culture. Also, in the world we live in, things, even though they're tough right now, they're better than they were, you know, a few hundred years ago or even 50 years ago. We have less poverty, we have more access to education, we have less child mortality. But this is something, and this is in Spanish, it says stress, and this was from last year, October last year. It says stress devours 91% of Spanish directors and executives. You could say this is probably the biggest thing happening right now. And I also talk a lot about the trust environment, where you create an environment of well-being. We putting a lot of pressure on our workers, we're putting a lot of pressure on ourselves. How can we support our people to feel safe and comfortable and supported? Maybe we need to have a well-being scheme. Maybe we need to have practices to help them in their physical and mental strength. And I think that's very important now, because we're asking people to work the same and even harder and being more creative so that we can get through this difficult time. So culture, well-being, that can help us with the innovation, building the right culture and organization, supporting our employees in a safe environment where we can help them to be resilient, strong mentally and physically. Then we're more likely to create innovation. So what is your why? Why are you doing stuff? It's got to be human-led. People come up with ideas, not robots. We know that if we look after people, there are many, many benefits. So good worker health, productivity, makes you more competitive, economic development, prosperity, social well-being and wealth. And they're positive things now. We're thinking more about our impact on community. We also see that pollution is going down. Do we want to go back to a world where the pollution is so high? We need to tailor the message and understand each worker's situation. Everybody has a backstory. So now we've proved that we can telework, and we thought we didn't know we could do this before. Now we're almost all of us are teleworking, but we continue to be productive. So as we have less capital, does it make sense to go back to the model where everybody's in the office? I don't think so. Firstly, people will feel valued, that we can adapt to their circumstance. Somebody might say, I want to work 2 days at home, 3 days in the office. Also, as organizations, we have less money right now. It's very different to house 1,000 people a week than 500. So these changes have a win-win. As long as we can have a win-win for the organization, our teams, and the clients, then everything works. People are more engaged when there's a benefit for them. There has to be a benefit. So things like teleworking now will have a benefit for everybody. So also in the question tab, can I ask you quickly, just with a word or two, what is your current business challenge? What is your biggest challenge right now? What is it? What is your biggest company challenge? We're talking about leadership. We're talking about the innovation mindset. What is going on in your organizations? Please feel free to share. What is going on? I'll be looking at the question tab. So what is going on? What is the biggest challenge that you have? What is the biggest challenge? What is the biggest challenge? Please go ahead. Please go ahead. What is the biggest challenge you face? Please share it, or even just think about it. What is it? Let me go down. Motivation, no problem. You're using Mac. Motivation is very important. Remember, we talked about motivation, the sense of more powerful is the internal motivation. Leadership challenges, diverse early career talent, collaboration when working remotely, new growth and revenues, traditional law firm way of thinking, losing business, create orientation, reorganize our program portfolio. Now, these are the type of things we need to understand, because Headspring, how do we work? We co-create always. So we spend a lot of time understanding your problems and needs, and then we will co-create a solution with our faculty and with our teams. So these are the type of things that we would start with. We will not give you something that's already made. We'll spend time to understand your specific needs and find answers, so we're more likely to be successful. So lack of certainty, inclusivity message, maintaining revenues, reduce staff, more work. So a lot of this combines with what we're doing, and what we'd love to have post these sessions with you, and we're doing many more. We'd like to sit down with you, understand your problems and needs, and spend time to co-create. So when we do something together, it creates value. It has to be personalized. It has to be tailor-made. Perfect. And that's very good. We're going to take all that data to understand and to understand the trends. Let's continue. Let me put this down. So if we look at some examples, these are examples of companies we work with at Headspring and I worked with personally. I talked about Salesforce, and very interesting about their company culture. Before they made any money, they talked about their values: 1 + 1 + 1. Give 1% of our time to society and donate it, 1% of our revenue, 1% of service and product. I don't think that is a coincidence that explains their incredible success. Also, if we look at other companies, for example, like Mercedes-Benz, they realized in a crisis moment a few years ago, people were buying less cars, and their mission was, we are an automobile maker, we're a car maker. They realize that people want to use a car, but they don't need to own it. They can rent or lease. So they actually changed their mission statement to say, we are not anymore a car maker. That's part of what we do. What we do, we are a mobility company. And the fact that they changed their mission and their purpose let them try new things out and experiment. So what experiments did they do? Something like Car2Go, which you might have in your city, where you have a small electric vehicle that is a Mercedes car, a smart car, and the management of the service is done by a startup. So they could make a collaboration, they could try something out to keep on being relevant, and Car2Go has been very successful. So we have to think, how do we change our purpose right now so that we're more relevant as things go on, and how we do create a mission that makes us be able to try new things out as things change so much. Also, when we talk about Santander, they did something very interesting recently. So before the current crisis of COVID, they realized younger people especially were not going to the branches, and they were actually going to other suppliers regarding online banking and banking on the mobile, because they're becoming a software company. So what they said is, we have many branches. How do we create engagement? How do we engage with the younger population? What did they do? They converted some of their branches into things called work cafes. Now, work cafes are places where you can do banking if you want, but basically it's a co-working space for free in top locations. In Madrid, we have 3, and really in the prime real estate areas like Salamanca in Madrid. So what you can do is you can go in there, spend all day working in a nice office with good internet, and if you want a coffee or a cake or biscuit, if you have a Santander account, you can buy them with a 20% discount. Now, the brave thing they did is they don't know the KPIs there. They don't know what's going to happen, but what they're doing is creating engagement, and more younger people are going to the work cafe and they're thinking Santander is giving me something. At some point, they'll give something back and they can monetize. Also, we talk about innovation today. Who do we trust? Look at Facebook. Facebook had a lot of issues because we didn't trust them with our data. So now they're doing a massive campaign to get our trust back, and they're focusing on other products and services in the portfolio, like WhatsApp. You can see recently on the new version of WhatsApp, it says powered by Facebook. And that is a branding exercise because they need to engage. So engagement is key. Lloyds Bank, why do I put Lloyds Bank there? That is an organization that has one of the most comprehensive well-being schemes I've ever seen. And that happened a few years ago when the CEO, Antonio Horta, had a breakdown. He said, if I can be affected because of the stresses of our business, what about the workers and the normal workers in our company? So now they support their workers in a well-being scheme that covers physical, mental, social, and spiritual questions. but they've extended it to all their suppliers and the families of the suppliers and their employees. Cemex, other companies, they're trying things out. SpaceX, a few years ago, you would have said, these guys are crazy. Now look at SpaceX. They talk about going to Mars. They have massive contracts with NASA, and it's a company that had revenues of almost 20 billion last year. So I think it's a time when everything is going through reset that we can try new things. So we have to develop a culture where we're not scared to think differently. And there are many examples. Tourism, very tough at the moment. We have to invent new things. A friend of mine works for Lufthansa, and they also have a very big cargo division apart from the normal airline division. And my friend told me, thanks to the fact he works in IT and in the cargo division, he doesn't fear for losing his job. So now cargo is very important, as supply chain is important regarding delivery of goods, but we cannot travel. So thankfully, Lufthansa had that other side, which is a thriving business. Now we can look to the past and learn. If we think about the recent crisis we had, 2007, 2009, that was also a very difficult time for business and innovation. But we talk about that time, the term cockroach unicorns. What are cockroach unicorns? The cockroach is a creature, they say, that can survive a nuclear bomb, and probably the only one that can do so. So it's incredibly tough and resilient. So cockroach is a time when things are very difficult, when there are a lot less of everything and less resources. But these companies, Airbnb, Spotify, and Dropbox, and even Uber, emerged in that financial crisis. What did they do? So we can look at them to learn from them to think about the future. What did they do? Let's look at some very key things. Quick thoughts, quick keys. What did they do? They moved fast. We've got to be very agile. You've got to react. We shouldn't be in survival mode now. We should be proactive to think, as things get more normal, how are we prepared for that? What are your contingency plans? Where are you now? Are you thinking about new products and services? Are you thinking about managing things virtually? Are you ready when things become more normal or more hybrid, where people can leave their homes? Cut costs. We have to be a bit more agile. We have to think about things that don't depend on money so much. And if we look at disruptive innovation, it doesn't necessarily depend on technology or resources, although if you have them, it can be good as well. Plan without too much money, because there's less capital in the market, and build trust. Trust is leader, teams, and our customers. And sustainability. We have to be sustainable on our financial way, and more our customers are being critical about how sustainable we are ecologically. We have seen the benefits of the situation in the sense of lower pollution. I don't think we want to go into a world where we cannot breathe on the street. And we are being very critical. If you think about yourself personally, how are companies behaving? How are they doing good things for society? They are the ones I want to connect with when I can, and when I can spend money and leave my home. Also, many sectors are actually gaining in this time. Anything around cloud, streaming, IT right now, GoToWebinar, Zoom. These companies are doing incredibly well because we're working in an online manner, almost 100%. Online gambling, well-being, healthcare, of course, automation, AI. So there are many sectors in a crisis which benefit. We have to think, how can we launch new ideas? How do we create a culture and foundation in our teams where people are happy to give that little bit extra? Once we give people enough money, money is not enough. It's about purpose, it's about autonomy and value, and helping others to learn. Now, as a quick summary of that, these are the things I think we should think about in what I've called the innovation puzzle. Obviously, at Headspring, we're here to help you. We do everything very personalized and tailor-made. So we would sit down with you to design a program for you, and we'd love to be able to do that, to have a design jam. Think about new markets. What are new markets for you? If you develop a new market, you can have a new business offer, and also you can have less competition if you define a new market. So maybe it's something completely new, or you decide to focus on a new up and coming market. Microsoft said they're doing incredibly well in the cloud. They've done 2 years of business in a question of weeks. Soft skills. In the end, people come up with ideas, and the soft skills are things that machines cannot do. So let's focus on them, the things that are very human. Communication. We need more open communication. Anybody can have an idea. So we have to create a culture where everybody can share. Also, we have to act. We have to do something. We cannot sit still. If we do something with good values, it will be well appreciated, even if it doesn't work. We have to be proactive. We have to create an environment of experimentation, and that can help us to be more creative and to find new things. Maybe think about being simple. Let's not be too complicated. We also have to make sure that we collaborate. So all of these things can help us. They can help us to move forward. And then an open culture. We need an open culture. So an open culture means that we can share openly from all levels of the business. And if the leaders of the business show that they're willing to give feedback, have more open conversation, that can cascade down into the organization. And then there's a reset. Maybe this is an opportunity to think completely out of the box, and it's absolutely okay. I'm using this time personally to think about my purpose and the things that I can do, because now I have a bit more time to do so. So think about these things as the keys of how we can move forward. Now, I'd like to go to the last part with a couple of quotes, and then we leave some time where Loic will help me with some Q&A. So another Disney quote, all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. It's a time to be brave. It's a time in a way that anything goes. But if we do this with good values, we're more likely to be successful. Think about our purpose, why you do something, why it exists, and align the purpose with all your stakeholders. And that can help you to adjust what you're doing, adjust your message, and try new things out. Purpose and value are very much connected. And if people feel a sense of purpose in their work, if they feel that they are positive values, we will engage with them. We'll have more interaction on a business level. And also people are more likely to give more, the famous discretion effort. So do things with love. What do I say there? Love in the sense of, I did a course at Brown University and we talked about love in business goes in 2 ways. First of all, doing things to the best of your ability. And secondly, thinking about the impact of what we do in others. Now, the impact of what we do as people and organizations right now is very important to create trust, so that when things become more normal, we're more likely to engage with those organizations and people. So I'd like to open up to Q&A, but I'd also like to ask you as homework, being a professor, we like to give a bit of homework. Think about, from what we've talked about and what you've been hearing, think about best practice. What is one thing you can do tomorrow to innovate or change the way you work, which can create value? Don't think about so many things. Think about things you can control, not about things that concern you, which are so many. What is one thing you can do from tomorrow? Thinking about new products or services, or even thinking about new things to change your company culture. So just think about one thing. So now we'd like to ask you if you have any comments, if you have any questions, or if you have anything to share about the one thing you can do from tomorrow. We hope that this input has been useful. It's a bit of a springboard. We'd be very happy to speak to all of you individually to think how we can tailor-make a way to help you to create value, especially in these complex times. So please, any comments, questions, even tell us one thing you want to do from tomorrow to innovate and change, please share.
Yeah, thank you very much, all the participants. We had quite a lot of comments actually on your different questions, quite a few questions coming in. So I have one here. So is there a way to frame the question I asked my team in order to encourage them to be more innovative?
Okay, sorry, 1 second. I just want to go back to the presentation, sorry. 1 second. Lloyd, could you repeat the question?
Sure, give me a second. So, is there a way to frame the questions I ask my team in order to encourage them to be more innovative?
Now, of course, I mean, framing the question is very important. So what I always say, I would ask people, I'd flip it over to them. So I would ask them, first of all, I would first look at a working agreement where you understand people's needs on an individual, group, and a task level, understand their values and questions, and then go into a process of design thinking. So first of all, I would say, I would leave it open to say, nothing is silly. We are open to share anything. Please, what do you need for us to have an environment where you're more likely to share your ideas? And then you start a discussion, and then you can start into a process of design thinking. So first of all, create an environment where people feel safe to share ideas. So ask them, what sort of environment, what sort of company culture do you want where you feel safe to share ideas, even if they're very much out of the box? I hope that
Thank you,
helps.
Bal. So we have another question here. We hear a lot of congratulatory talk about our capacity to keep working from home, but national economies are collapsing. Is it really a sustainable model for the future?
Now, that is a very good point. We know it's a very difficult time. And I would say that we have to think about trust and safety. It's very dangerous to let people go out of their homes if they're going to get infected. And mentally, they're not going to be willing to do that. But as I mentioned before, I think there's a win-win there. So people have proven that they can work from home, even if traditionally they didn't do so. And companies have less money, so they will not be willing to house so many people all the time in a building. So it will reduce our costs. It'll also personalize to help people who are comfortable working from home. So we have to go into a hybrid situation. So what I see, maybe by the end of the year or beginning of next year, especially in Spain, we'll have a situation where people negotiate how they want to work. So there'll be a hybrid of teleworking, face-to-face, and maybe it'll be like a 60-40 split between face-to-face 60, 40% teleworking. And the advantages are we're personalizing, we help people to have balance in their lives, but also as organization, we're reducing our cost. So if we can have a win-win from that, I definitely think things like teleworking are here to stay, and even more so.
Great, thank you. We have another question. Well, there's actually a comment. Thank you, Professor. Excellent presentation. And then there's the question. How do I motivate my team to think strategically to improve our processes and procedures?
Well, first of all, you have to tell them that they're important to the company. You have to tell them that, it's key that they be more creative because they are an important part of the team, so they feel valued. So think about the purpose. Why are we doing this process? Because we realize that everybody has an idea, everybody can contribute. We value people because we want to give them more autonomy. And also at the same time, maybe we can help each other to learn. So if you build teams where people work on their specialized areas, great. But if you build cross teams where people can learn about new things, they're more likely to give more. So I think, again, it's a question about the culture. And if people see there's a win for them, and if they feel valued and it aligns with purpose, once we understand them, people are more likely to be creative. As I said earlier, I've seen that when we've designed the culture in our classes, people come up with incredible ideas because they feel safe to give them, and we create an environment where we foster that type of innovation. And it's really quite incredible to see.
Thank you, Bal, for that. I'm a bit conscious of time, so maybe we'll take one last question. How can I build an effective team for my startup company and allowing them to collaborate well with me?
Perfect. And I do that a lot. Actually, I work with startups. I'm a founder, investor in startups. So one thing is formal agreements about how you work together. But what I start with, again, is a working agreement to align values and purpose. So I think about, what are the important things for you in an individual level? How do you like to work and communicate? What do you expect of your team, and how you want to organize the work? So I think do a deep working agreement between you, so you have that foundation before you jump to do the work. Because We'll all agree on the banner words like trust, respect, and communication, but they mean different things for each person. So if we listen, if people feel valued, that creates this strong foundation where we're more likely to be successful. And that is something that maybe you don't do yourself, but you can have an external person to help you to facilitate that. So spend a lot of time in the team stuff, in the team discussion, and then you're more likely to create this puzzle, which creates the foundation to growth. And that's not something that we do a lot. So I spend a lot of time working with teams so they can understand each other and understand what is a perspective. So working in space, our founder of Booster said, I want to go to space to give space back to the people who paid for it, the taxpayer. Then our CFO says we need to make money. So in the end, the goal is the same, but the way to go there, what's underneath is different. We need to capture that. So we need to discuss it, and we need to understand people's expectations and what will help them to work in a way that's effective and that's more pleasurable than not.
Thank you, Val. We went a little bit over time.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, thank you very much. It was very, very interesting. We had actually quite a lot of comments saying thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. So thank you, Val, for joining us today. I'd like as well to thank everybody who joined the call. We were about 100 people. There was a lot of engagement, so that was really, really good. So yeah, thank you very much, Val. Pleasure again to have you on our webinars, and hopefully for the next one. And I hope everybody that you have a great day. Please be safe, and hopefully we'll see you in the next webinar.
Thank you, everybody. Take good care. Bye.
Bye.